Then let's begin with a word of prayer. Sometimes, Father, we don't declare your word to others for various reasons, not least of which is the one kind of scary. Well, Father, help us to overcome that fear. Help us to reach out to others and declare your word. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
There's only one source on this one, and that's Acts chapter 18. Okay? So everybody can look it up. Follow along if they want. Okay? The Lord appears to Paul. Now we're getting into whole different characters now. None of the apostles and none of that biblical land and all that stuff. Now we're really changing our venue. That's a fancy word. Location, right. It's the spring of 51. That means it's been 21 years since Jesus was died and resurrected. So keep time in mind here. And we're going to be in a place called Corinth, which is in Greece. So we're not even on the Asian continent anymore. Okay? So, here we go. Acts 18, 1 through 4, please.
Yeah, I got it here.
Okay.
After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla. Because Claudius had ordered the Jews to leave Rome, Paul went to see them. And because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them, and they worked together. By trade, they were tent makers. Every Sabbath, he would argue in the synagogue and would try to convince the Jews and the Greeks.
Okay. What is this telling you about this Paul fellow? Now, just so you're right, Paul used to be called Saul, and last time when we got together, he was on that road to Damascus and Saul. A lot has happened in the 21 years since then. Now he is known only as Paul. Okay? So, what's happening with Paul?
Well, we know he earned his income as opposed to living off of other people.
Correct. And do you remember what his income was from?
Making tents.
Making tents. Mm-hmm.
Which is probably a skilled trade.
I'm sure it was. Now he can do it all for the homeless people. They all have tents, but they're all fancy tents, not like those days. Okay? Anyway, so he's a tent maker, and he's left Athens. What is Athens? Can anybody tell me about Athens? Athens, Greece?
Well, it was the big city in Greece at the time.
It's the capital, it's the big city.
And that was actually nearby. Delphi was where they had the statue to the unknown God that he talked about.
Good. Okay, so you remember some of his story here. Okay, Athens is the big town. So he's going to a smaller place called Corinth, which is not too far away, I hope. And he finds a Jew, because he's a Jew, he's going to meet Jews. That's kind of terrible of him, but of course that's, racist and all of that.
He always started out at the local synagogue.
And we feel more comfortable with people of our own culture. Okay? So, Aquila, or however you want to pronounce it, was a native of Pontus. Now, Pontus is over in what we modern-day Turkey. Okay? That's where they were from originally, but they'd been living apparently in Rome. Okay? So, what happened to them such that he could meet them?
Well, the Emperor Claudius had evicted all of the Jews
Correct.
from Rome.
Or tried to.
Oh, he evicted most of them, and the other ones he did other things too. But he got rid of most of them, and they left. They went, and they settled down in this place called Corinth, which is somewhere between Rome and Pontus. Okay? And tent makers, and every Sabbath he would go to the synagogue and try to convince the Jews what? And Greeks of what?
That Jesus is the
Messiah. Okay.
Is there any other Priscilla in Bible. I
No.
don't remember hearing that name before.
No, she's the only one, and obviously this guy knew about it, because he popped that name right off, not even questioned. Priscilla, he didn't even check for
That's the
pronunciation.
first time I've ever seen that in any Bible thing.
There we go.
I think that's the only place.
That's the only place.
Oh, my goodness.
She's quite a lady. Okay, here we go. Paul walked from Athens to Corinth, about 48 miles, arriving in only 2 days. Okay? So, from the capital here, he's coming over to Corinth. This is the Peloponnesus. And this is where Sparta was, and these were the Greek city-states. But this is Athens here.
So-
Any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, so this makes me wonder, when he went to Delphi, was that the same trip, or was
Oh,
it,
no, we're not getting into that. It was another time.
that was,
Yeah,
okay.
that was actually as he was approaching here. He was coming
Yeah,
down.
because Delphi's up in the mountains.
Right. So that was on as he's coming into Athens. But that's another time. We're way off on his journey. Remember, it's been 21 years now,
Okay,
and he's been doing other things.
yeah.
Okay? If you want to know more about it, you'll have to take a class on Paul and his journeys, his life and letters, for example.
You're gonna hand these out?
They already got them. I gave them on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Okay. Corinth, with a population of around 800,000, big town overall, was located on an isthmus between the Greek mainland and the Peloponnesus. What is an isthmus? An isthmus is a stretch of land with water on both sides. It's the connector.
So when we were in Greece, we wanted to go to Corinth, and we ended up not, because it's actually not excavated much yet. It's still just ruins.
Yes, it's, yeah.
I was surprised.
Interesting. Okay, the distance across the isthmus was only 3.5 miles. Corinth controlled the trade across the isthmus and between the Peloponnesus and the mainland. So it's a four-way crossing. They've got the controls. Good to control trade, get more taxes out of
And
it.
that, yeah, I was gonna say, that tells you they have money.
They have money. They most definitely had money. But there are problems as well, of course. On the northwest side of the isthmus, that would be the upper left, as you look, this was upper left is the northwest, was the town of whatever. On the Gulf of Corinth is the water on the north side of the isthmus. On the southeast side of the isthmus was the town of whatever on the Saronic coast, Gulf. Both towns were named after the sons of Poseidon. Okay? And were the anchorage for both the Roman Navy and merchant ships. Okay? So, there are two towns, one on each side here, one here, and these are where these ships would come, the merchant ships would come in here, and the Roman Navy would be here, so it could handle all control of the Aegean, and it would be over here, so it could control all. So this was a very central point.
Yeah, it's also protected water from weather for the
Very
ships.
much so, very much so, which matters a lot. Okay? Any question, thought, or comment so far? Yeah, I'm just trying to give you the physical setting. Okay? Between them lay a road some 25 feet wide over which boats could be dragged. You have to understand, there was no canal. That comes much, much later. You park on one side, and then your ship is actually dragged across the road, the 3.5 miles, and dropped off on the other side. And it's a lot more time consuming than going all the way around the Peloponnesus, and safer too. And no, these were not large ships that were being hauled over here. They were the smaller boats. Large ones still had to go around. But there was a road there, and this is kind of interesting.
So that is a modern day canal next to it there?
Correct. That's the Corinth Canal, which was definitely built much later than this. But you get a sense, you can see a little bit of the road there. Okay, any question or thought?
No, just that it looks kind of like a Roman road.
It was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, here we go then. Corinth was named after the son of Apollo, and the temple of Apollo was of supreme importance to them in Corinth. This is what's left of the temple of Apollo. and Paul definitely would have seen it. As Paul approached the city, his attention would naturally be drawn to the 1,800-foot hill, which is called the Arrow Corinth, the Hill of Corinth. And you see a fortress is built on top of that. It was a very secure place. That's where you back up when the armies come. Okay.
Can look out over to the sea, to,
Yep.
see if someone's coming.
Yes, it's a very good vantage point,
Very defensible.
very much so. And you get to hike up there. It's good for your blood and, get your steps in, whatever. Okay, here we go. Any question or thought? At the foot of the Arrow Corinth were the temples to Apollo, Aphrodite, and
Asclepius.
Asclepius, the healing, as well as the Agora. Now this is the Agora, this is the shopping area. It's a big city. And this is not Stater Brothers. This is
They
not,
don't know Stater Brothers either.
this is not, what do they have? Safeway, or any of them. This is big. All the local people come in with their produce and stuff, and they sell it. They get a little spot and they market their stuff. This is a very busy, active place. This is the Agora, it's the shopping center.
Combination between the outlet mall and the farmer's market.
There you go. Thank you. I have no idea what you're talking about. But it's good enough for me. Any question or thought? They don't have refrigeration, by the way. You get what you get to eat, you get it that day. Walking down the main street, and this is the main street, and there is the Arrow Corinth, up there, you can't miss it. This is the main street as it has been excavated. Paul would see numerous statues in this wealthy, sophisticated metropolis. Question or thought? I have no idea who the guy is.
Well, they were, we know that the Greeks were really good at making statues, and they did a lot of
Can you
them.
imagine making something like that?
Carving it? No, I can't.
Oh, they
I can't
did
either.
fantastic work.
It's just,
How many months it would take to carve something like that?
I don't know, but I do know when you go look at that stuff, they look real. I mean, the detail is pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, I've been to some museums that have some stuff.
that's
and it's
just
like
amazing.
Yeah,
Yes, it
it's
is.
To make that.
astonishing.
That's an astonishing culture.
Oh, it
Sculpture.
is.
And the rock that they're making it out of is
I
not
know.
soft stone either, it's hard.
Hard
It's
marble.
marble.
Yeah, it's tough
I
stuff.
just can't even fathom it.
But it's impressive, isn't it? Awesome. Okay, so this is compared to, Judea? There's no comparison. This is a real culture. And this is not even the big city. That would be Athens. This is Corinth. Okay, let's find out more. But Corinth was also well known for other things as well. Specifically, it was a harbor town. Sailors had needs. Corinth supplied them. No comment. Unless you want to make a comment.
No?
Good, I didn't think so. It was
Get
well
tattoos.
It was a well-known fact that just the temples of Aphrodite once had available 1,000 temple prostitutes. There can be no doubt that there were many more for use by the sailors. This is a harbor town. Okay, that's standard procedure. Any questions? Okay, being drunk after spending time in one of the drinking establishments and then causing trouble was a common phenomenon. Sound familiar, doesn't it?
Mhm.
We've all heard of such things. Murder, assault, fights, beatings, kidnapping, rape, and 100 other abuses undoubtedly abounded. It's a harbor town.
And probably not all over town, but.
Oh no, you
but
had your
by the
wealthy
harbor,
sections.
You know,
Yeah,
yes.
you'd have your wealthy sections and they would have their security, personal security that everybody else got to pay for.
Downtown Long
Downtown.
Beach
There
used
you-
to be rough.
Yeah, I was thinking
That's
about
where
it.
I grew up.
Any questions, thought, or comment? And this is a sense of what the town is really like.
Did they make those people have to, if you murdered somebody, did they murder you then, or what?
If they could catch you.
Huh.
This is not a highly organized society. There's a lot of looseness involved here.
Well, so you stop and think about it as well. I'm sure if someone of means were murdered, they would be looking
Oh, yeah.
carefully.
Oh, yeah.
But someone, if it's someone of low stature in the
Yeah.
city,
Yeah.
They just ignore it.
well, yeah, okay,
And
it
the
happens.
initial thing, you send your worst detective over there and he takes a look around and says, it's not worth my effort, and he files it as a too bad, so sad. I'm sure that's pretty standard procedure even today. And today we have everything from fingerprinting and biotech and all this other stuff where we can go find, genetics and all. They didn't have any of that.
No, of course not.
And you had people willing to talk to a police officer or a Roman or whatever. No, they're going to get away with it. And this happens I'm sure it was pretty common.
We're even now finding things happened that years ago with
Yeah.
the knowledge we have.
We had no way of knowing it, and that was just 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So this is normal. I just want you to understand the situation in the towns here, especially the harbor town. The city was far from the image that they wanted to portray. Sound familiar?
Well, I mean, Greece today, same thing.
Oh, yeah. But then you've been there?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
2019.
oh, okay. And you saw the poverty?
Oh, yeah.
Because they have a fair amount of that.
Oh, yeah. One of the guys driving a car for us that took us to the airport talked a little bit about his income and so on. More than 50% of his income pays rent in his one-bedroom flat.
50%, that's about what we have today. One bedroom flat, that's it.
Yeah, one
For his
bed,
family.
rental apartment, yeah. He had a wife and kids. And that was, apparently, the economy there at that time was not what it had previously been.
Right.
And so costs went up and incomes didn't.
Sounds familiar, okay, yeah. All right, any other question or thought? You understand something about what Corinth is like. You've got all this sophistication, and you have the harbor town. Paul went to live with Aquila and Priscilla. They had originally been from Pontus, but had been living in Rome. As I said, Pontus is in the center of Turkey, basically. They'd gone all the way to Rome, and they were not going to stay there. They now lived in Corinth. They had just moved to Corinth last year in 49 AD because Emperor Claudius had evicted the Jews from Rome. We've seen the edict. It was a good situation because Paul and Aquila were both Jewish and both were tent makers. Okay? Every Saturday, Paul would attend synagogue and tell the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. Nothing surprising here, is there?
No?
Any other thought?
Well, it's not gonna take long before the Jewish leadership gets jealous and,
Yeah, that's going to happen pretty quick, I think.
yep.
Acts 18, 5 through 8.
Okay, I'll take that one.
Okay?
When Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was Jesus. And when they opposed and reviled him, he shook out his garments and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads, I am innocent. From now on I will go to the Gentiles." And he left there and went to the house of a man named Justus.
Titus.
Well, it doesn't say.
Go ahead.
Anyway, we'll call it Titus, that's
Yeah, it's easier
easier.
to pronounce.
Titus Justus, a worshiper of God. His house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord, together with his entire household. And many of the Corinthians, hearing Paul, believed and were baptized.
Okay,
That's good.
tell me what happened. Tell me things you see here.
Well,
By the way, Silas and Timothy are helpers, okay? And they've been off in Macedonia, which is way up to the northwest of Greece, okay? They're arriving. Now what?
Okay, so Paul is not getting a lot of response.
Not positive anyway.
Give him trouble, so he said, you know what, I tried to tell you the truth, you can't blame me if you go to hell, you know.
Wow, okay.
So he is saying he's just I'm gonna go to the Gentiles,
Okay,
he's not having luck with the Jews.
okay, anything else you see here?
I'm glad he had a lot of people start believing.
Say again, please?
I'm glad he had a lot of people start believing and.
There were a number that
Yeah.
started to believe.
It's
That's
pretty-
good.
Pretty to-
Baptized and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty easy to argue that Paul was the greatest evangelist.
Sure.
But what I see here is I think about, so this Titus Justus, a worshiper of God and an official of the synagogue, also living next door to the synagogue, tells me he's a wealthy man,
Yes,
because that would be prime real estate.
absolutely.
And for him to become a believer and his household, you would think that would hold some sway over the Jews in the
I'm
synagogue.
sure it did, over some of them.
Well, yeah, so you had Titus and you had Crispus.
Crispus is the other one. Yeah, he's the actual
So it
one who owns
wasn't
the
that
house.
nobody was believing, but majority did not.
Of course, and that's standard procedure. So he was having some successes, that the Lord's message was getting across, the Spirit was moving them, that's all good. What else do you see?
Well, so many of the Corinthians who heard Paul became believers and were baptized. That is very telling. But he's already said, "I'm going to the Gentiles." So that
Gentiles.
tells you who these people were.
Right, the new believers were going to be the Gentiles. And be careful of his overstatement at times. When he says many, don't get too excited, okay? Keep the numbers low in your mind, okay? But they're not the Jews anymore. Okay. Anything else you see here?
Well, when he talks about your blood being on your own heads, it's common to think of people saying, okay, well, you killed the Christ.
Right?
And so,
His blood's on your hands.
yeah, but in actual fact, these are not the same people that crucified Christ.
No. But does it seem like he's saying they're responsible for their salvation and they have rejected it?
Yes.
Therefore, the blood is their life. Their life, their soul is in their own hands, and they have rejected Christ. That's no longer his responsibility. He did what he
shook the
could.
Dust from his clothes and said,
Yeah.
it's up to you now.
It's
Yeah.
up to them.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing. We try to tell people, and they kind of don't in this current society. It's not our responsibility. We sow the seed, but the growth is the Lord's. Okay? You remember how when he went through a town in Samaria, they knocked the dust off their feet, off their sandals, and went on, because that's their problem at that point. Okay?
The only thing that I see with this is the amount of unbelievers, and had I been there, I don't know which side I would have been on, who knows? Easily could have been on the wrong side.
I think that's,
But-
yeah,
But the thing that I see, I keep going back to Jesus' words that with God, all things are possible.
yes. And God doesn't tell us it's our responsibility to make sure they're converted. It's our responsibility to sow the seed, that is to talk about it, to give them the opportunity to encounter the Spirit. Okay? Okay, anything else you happen to see here? Oh, come on. Paul's going to stick a knife in them. What? Come on. He's provocative. He's pushing. What's happening? What did he do to them to just push them right off the edge?
Well,
He moved in next door to their synagogue.
oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's very true. And it turns out that the person who's the leader of the synagogue converts.
Yeah.
Now, that's a knife in somebody's back. Okay? He's being very provocative.
That's routine of Paul.
Of course it is. Just remember that.
Yeah.
It's part of who he is. Okay? Sometimes we're called to do the same kind of thing and be a little provocative. But anyway, it's not necessarily you that should do that. Let's leave it to those who can handle it. So, okay, let's go on. In the late fall of 50 AD, soon after Silas and Timothy arrived, maybe in late November, the Jews refused to listen to Paul anymore. Paul chose to go to the Gentiles. Go
You might
ahead.
want to make, you have choose instead of chose.
Did I misspell that again?
Yeah, only one O.
I do it every time.
I know.
Okay. Acts 18, 7 through 8.
I do think.
Thank you.
I thought she already read that.
Yeah, I
Nope.
did. I did 5 through 8 last.
She
Oh.
did 5 through 8.
Okay. In the spring of 51 AD, Paul went to live beside the synagogue with the believer, Titus Justus, and the church began meeting in homes instead of the synagogue. Twice Paul attempted to go to Thessalonica, you don't worry about that so much, in the next couple of months, but he was prevented, and then you'll have to do a study on Paul to understand that. So it was in early spring of 51 that Paul sent his first letter to the Thessalonians. This is when he wrote his first letter to the Thessalonians while he was here in Corinth. Okay? Question or thought? Paul also had been experiencing persecution. Paul had moved in next door to the synagogue. Provocative. Then Crispus, an official of the synagogue, became a believer, and he and his family were baptized. The Jews were appalled. Paul feared for his life, as did all the Jews that had become believers. None of the live and let live stuff that we're supposed to do. They experienced a Jewish onslaught, the same kind of harassment and intimidation that was being experienced by the Jewish members of Thessalonica. Or Thessalonia, if you like it, but it's Thessalonica. What do you see? What do you hear? What are your thoughts?
Well, it seems it's clear when you see this what the Jews were doing. But the thing that I think about Jews is they have a long history of being persecuted themselves, and you would think that they would learn from that and be more accepting of other people. And
That
that doesn't
sounds good.
happen. It doesn't happen, though.
It doesn't happen that way.
On the other hand, the foundation of the Jewish faith was God is one,
Mhm.
you know, and when Paul starts talking about, you know, Jesus is Yahweh, Jesus is Lord, and, you know, he did all of these godlike things, that's heresy.
Yeah, except he
You know?
does use their own scriptures to show them how it's justified.
Yes, but they don't buy his
Right.
interpretation.
Right.
Okay? So, people who have been abused as children don't learn from that, but they tend to occasionally, at least, abuse their children. It's a way of behaving that they are stuck with. Okay? So, don't be too surprised at this. They don't always learn from it. Although overall, in general, certainly the Jews are very, today especially, are very open to allowing everybody else their own perspective. And even within their own culture, they have the conservative and the liberal and the ultra-liberal and the ultra-conservative Jews. There's quite a variety within the Jewish community.
But that's these
Yeah.
days.
Well,
Yeah, I'm just
but
saying,
even, okay, but remember,
you can't
these
have-
guys are in Corinth. Corinth is a wild society, and they had all of these temples to the Greek gods
It's true.
and temples to the unknown God, for
Yeah,
example.
That's true.
And so they're sitting in an area that is very much non-Jewish,
Correct.
and everywhere they look, they're going to see things that they might disagree with.
Yes,
So why pick on this one group? I don't know.
because this group specifically is challenging their way of life. the laws of Moses. The whole base of who they are being challenged by this Paul guy and these Christians.
Don't
Okay?
you, wouldn't we be better to say their understanding of their scriptures is being challenged because
Sure,
be-
okay.
because Jesus really didn't abolish the old, right?
Correct. Okay, he just redefined it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can understand now that he is experiencing the same thing that his people in Thessalonica are experiencing. So he's going to write a letter to them, and studying the letter to Thessalonians, you'll find that they are being persecuted. Well, Paul truly understands that. Okay, but that would come if you were having a study on Paul. Acts 18, 9 and 10.
Oh, I can read that.
Thank you.
And the Lord said to Paul in the night by a vision, "Do not be afraid any longer, but go on speaking, and do not be silent. For I am with you, and no man will attack you in order to harm you, for I have many people in this city."
What does it tell you?
Well, encouraging to not chicken out.
Yeah.
Don't quit talking.
Yeah, spread
Encouraging him to continue to
Yeah.
proclaim the gospel.
Mhm.
Okay? Anything else?
He must have been thinking about giving up, so Jesus said,
I think
come
he
in
would
a
have,
vision and tell him,
something
no.
must have been in his head.
Yeah.
Is the-
So when
yeah.
things go against you, how many of us don't consider giving up? I mean, realistically, we all need encouragement sometimes, and
Yeah.
clearly Paul is a human, he needed encouragement.
And he got
He
it.
may have been down, and the Lord goes, oh, we
I
need,
gotta get
yeah.
something.
Although there's also a matter of fear here, isn't there?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, what are they gonna do to me?
What are they going to do to me? You know?
Saying you want to get attacked.
His life encountered a number of situations in which he was made uncomfortable,
Yeah,
Yeah.
to say
Yeah.
the best.
snuck out the window.
Yeah, that was the best one. So he's also concerned about his life, his health, etc. Okay, as well as those of the believers. They are also going to be under attack. At least the Jewish ones. The Greek ones, the Gentile ones are probably less so, but certainly those traitors that had left the Jewish faith and believed in Jesus Messiah, they were part of this attack. They were persecuted. How could they be persecuted? How would they do that? How would someone be persecuted?
Well,
Slow down and think it out.
so threatened with death for one.
Sure, that's ultimate. Or actually, ultimate is actually killing him. But threatening him with death. What else?
Probably telling stories that were incorrect about what they had said and what they
Lying
had
about
done.
him, okay? Or trying to show they're idiots.
Yeah, false testimonies.
False testimony. What else?
Beating them, throwing things at them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Physically, just,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Anything else?
Well, some of them were imprisoned. Some of them were.
Yes.
Some of them were.
Yes.
Were flogged.
Could well be, not likely, but not, yeah, not around here anyway. Try this one. You're fired.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer have money. We're not going to let you have support for your mother who needed the extra handout from the synagogue. They're financially attacked. They're socially attacked. They're excluded from certain groups. There's rumors about them as being eaters of blood or some drinkers of blood or something. There's all sorts of ways in which you can harm another person or their family or their situation, attack their children, have your children attack their children. There's all sorts of ways in which this persecution can occur.
Well, and once gossip starts, you can't turn that off.
Can't put it back in the bottle. No.
Yeah.
Anything else that you can see here?
Well, but Jesus appeared to Paul
Yes.
at night in a vision. Now, to me, if it were a dream, it would say dream. For me, a vision is something that you see when you're awake.
Yes.
So how that works, I don't know, because it hasn't happened to me, but
Good.
somehow,
He woke up and he was seeing the Lord in front of him. Okay, this is a vision. You're right, it's not a dream. Okay, and he's awake for it, and he's being
encouraged.
he's encouraged, but he's also being given a little confidence here that the Lord cares about what's happening to him and the followers, that the Lord is going to watch out for him, that even others will help him. See, it's got these, I have many people in the city. They will back you up, protect you maybe.
And I would expect during that time to see a vision would not have been particularly unexpected, in that there's other stories about visions within our scripture. And
Yes.
so to have something like that happen would be less surprising than what we might think of today.
Yeah, we don't tend to think, we would say the person's having an episode or, psychotic or, I don't know, some psychological thing. But in those days, that was the normal explanation for it. A vision is a specific message from, in this case, from God. From the Lord, telling him it's a very specific thing. And it's a visual thing because it's a vision. So he actually gets to see the Lord. The Lord's at the hand of power. He's at the right hand of God, up by the throne of God. It's the last place we saw him. Okay? And from there, he is showing himself to Paul. The last time Paul saw him was on the road to Damascus, 21 years earlier. Mm-hmm. It's been a chunk of time. I'm sure it would be quite reassuring to see him again. Any questions, thoughts, or comments? Good. One night the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. The Lord promised that Paul would be safe and should therefore speak boldly. So Paul decided to stay in Corinth for the winter.
So do we know how long he was in Corinth altogether?
Year and a half is minimum.
Okay.
Paul would stay another year, often proclaiming Jesus from a large platform called the Bema in the Corinthian Agora. This is a platform area where speakers would come and sit down and have people come and listen to them.
And we do know that the Greeks were big on philosophical.
Entertainment?
Well, I'm not necessarily just entertainment, but they're trying to enlighten themselves.
Correct.
And because the Greeks were big on this, it would be no surprise that someone would come and speak and get a crowd to listen to them.
They had it all the time.
Yeah.
That was a form of entertainment for one thing. Mm-hmm. And certainly the upper people, the people who had time to put into thinking, they would invite folks in. But for the regular person walking through the door, they might hear something and stop. Mm-hmm. They were shopping and they stopped. That's the idea. You put yourself in a marketplace or in a place where people will be, and there you start talking. And hopefully the Lord will reach out, that is, the Spirit will reach out to these people and attract them. Okay? During their daily lives where they don't have time to meditate. Okay? Anything else? It was in the fall of 51 that he wrote his second letter to the Thessalonians. And next time when we get together, the Lord appears to Paul again.